Welcome back to Coachology in 20, where we discuss coaching concepts in 20 minutes. That being said, the past couple, I've gone a little bit over time, so I'm going to work to get to the 20-minute mark today. That's my goal and my challenge. If you're tuned in, please say hi. Let me know where you tuned in from. Let me know if you have any questions as we go through today's concept. I can see we've got Adele tuned in. Thank you so much for being here. Really wonderful to see you support us every week in our Coachology in 20 space. So thank you for being here. If you're new to coaching, get your iPad ready, get your notebook ready, get whatever it is and where you like to take your notes, get that ready and start to write down these new concepts. If you're an experienced or seasoned coach, I don't like using that word seasoned, so I'm going to stick to experienced coach. If you're an experienced coach, then get your fingertips ready so you can share your wisdom, thoughts, and your experience as a coach with everybody who's tuned in both live and on the replay. And today we are going to be building on from how we look. In the past two sessions, we've looked at how we build rapport, what we need to be aware of in case we break rapport, and how we make that conscious so we can work on not breaking that relationship with our clients. We're going to build on that today, and we're going to look at empathy in coaching. We're going to be talking about the difference between empathy and sympathy. We're going to look at 5 ways in which we can empathize with our clients or show and demonstrate empathy in our coaching space. And we're also going to look at 3 ways in which we can try to detach ourselves emotionally. Because there's a big risk when it comes to empathy in coaching that we empathize a little bit too much, especially if we're an empath and we're an empathetic person in general, that we actually become emotionally involved, and it can be quite heavy for us as coaches. So what tips or strategies or techniques, and I would love to hear from everybody tuned on when we get to that slide, on how we can detach ourselves from that situation with our clients so we don't become too emotionally involved. But to get us started, I always like to open with a question. So I've got 2 questions. The first one is, what is empathy? So it makes sense for us to understand what empathy is. And it's often confused with sympathy. And they're 2 very distinct ways in which we can connect. We think of what's known as the empathy ladder. I don't know if anybody's looked at the empathy ladder, or the ways in which we can engage. Empathy and sympathy are ways in which we can show human connection with other individuals. In this space, with our clients. So if you're tuned in, what is empathy? How do you define empathy as a coach? Let me know in the comments box. What is empathy? Please feel free to share what it's not. I mentioned that it's not sympathy. And then we're going to do a little bit of exercise here together. I'm going to put up some statements and some angles and directions. And I want you to predict or guess whether you think the question on the screen is going to be empathetic or sympathetic. As a coach, will we be coming from a place of empathy or sympathy? Because the general rule of thumb, as a coach, we should be coming from a place of empathy, but not so that we're emotionally involved in the space that it becomes draining. And there's certain times when we need to step away from empathy. We might have to use sympathy as an approach to our coaching conversation. Whatever the client is sharing with us, we might not have experienced something similar. It might be really difficult for us to put ourselves into the shoes of the client. So there's a clue to what empathy is. So we might have to come from a place of sympathy. And by understanding whether to come from empathy or sympathy, what we're really doing here as a coach is coming from a place of compassion. We become skilled enough to know the approach that we need to take. So what is empathy? Nobody's put it in the comments box. I can see we've got a lot of people tuned in. So who's going to be the first brave person to put how they define empathy in the comments box? Whilst I'm waiting for those definitions to come through, and before I share my definition in a nutshell of what empathy is, the next question I've got to ask, if you're an experienced coach that's tuned in right now, how empathetic are you on a scale of 1 to 10 towards your clients? I want you to write that down in your notepad or on your iPad, whatever you use to capture notes. How empathetic do you believe you are on a scale of 1 to 10? I can see we've got Donna tuned in. Great to see you here, Donna. Thank you so much for being here. Thank you so much for being here every week and supporting our Coachology in 20. I really, really appreciate it. So empathy in the simplest form is our ability to put ourselves in the shoes of the other individuals, in coaching, in the shoes of our clients, to really use our imagination to imagine and feel what they are feeling and what they are going through. And it's not to be confused with sympathy. Sympathy is more of a distance way of trying to understand and feeling sorry or some form of self-pity, some form of pity, not self-pity, apologies, pity towards that individual. So empathy and sympathy are very, very different. Both have its place within the coaching space. And today we're going to be looking at when we should use empathy and when we should use sympathy. Adele is saying to listen deeply and see what is happening through your client's eyes. I love that. That's another beautiful way to sum up empathy there, Adele. It's about listening deeply. It's about putting ourselves in the position, in the shoes of our clients to fully understand, imagine, and feel what they are going through in terms of what they're sharing in our coaching space. Now we're going to do a little bit of an exercise. I'm going to put a comment on the screen, and I want you to tell me in the comments box whether you think this is coming from a place of empathy or a place of sympathy. And this is going to allow us to understand the difference between the two. So we say, I feel sorry for you. Something's happened, the client's sharing a lot of information, and we say, I feel sorry for you. Is this a place of empathy or is it a place of sympathy? And if you're not a coach, if you're just tuned in, you're learning something new. Think about your friends, your family, individuals that you talk with, your work colleagues. When we use the words, I feel sorry for you, are we coming from a place of sympathy or empathy? Adele is saying sympathy. Does anybody think this is a place of empathy? Donna's saying sympathy. Got a lot of sympathies coming in the comments box. Fantastic. So it's correct. It's a place of sympathy. If we're showing feelings of sorry, there's a lack of connection there. We're quite distant from the client. Then when we're sharing the words that I feel sorry for you, I feel sorry for what you're going through, that is coming from a place of sympathy. Now, there's no right or wrong place to come from. Just as a coach, if we want to really deepen that connection, we need to come from a place of empathy. So my next question is, what might an empathetic view look like? What would it be different? What would we say differently if we're empathizing with our client? So I feel sorry for you is showing sympathy. What might be an empathetic response? Again, let me know in the comments box. So empathy might look like, I understand how you feel. There's an element of understanding there. We can connect. We're in the moment with the client. We're not just saying, I feel sorry for you. Donna's just put in here as well. Let's put in, Donna, I can feel how difficult this is for you. So there's different variations, but it's shown that we're on the same level of understanding or the same level of feeling of what our client is really going through. We're not just using some sympathetic words from a distance. Next one, pity from a distance. I'll just give you a clue. If we're showing pity from a distance, is that sympathy or is that empathy? That must be really awful. What you're going through must be really awful. In terms of pity there, is it sympathy or am I empathizing? I can't imagine what that must feel for you right now. Sympathy or empathy? Donna's saying sympathy. That's correct. It is a place of sympathy. So if we're saying words of endearment, if we're saying something along the lines of, I can't imagine how this feels for you, that must be awful. We're not using that language to connect. We're not empathizing, we're sympathizing with our clients with that language. So again, next question, what might an empathetic version or angle or approach look like? So if sympathy is pity from a distance, what is empathy? What does that look like or feel like for a client? Today, I'm making you do the work. Lots of questions. Normally, I'm giving you lots of information and spin it to you, but I want to make this a little bit engaging. So I'm making you do the work today. So an empathetic version would look something like a connection in the struggle. So we're connecting to what it is the client is sharing with us. Maybe we've lived a similar experience. Maybe it's bringing up feelings and emotions. Maybe we can really put ourselves and imagine ourselves going through that situation and how that situation would feel. Donna's saying here, sympathy for me is like a pat on the shoulder, and empathy is a heartfelt hug. For those that love metaphors and visualizations, Donna has summed the difference between sympathy and empathy up beautifully there. So sympathy is like a pat on the shoulder, and empathy is a heartfelt hug. And that's what our clients feel. Our clients can feel sympathy at times, and our clients can feel empathy. And if we really want to build that strong connection, we need to learn to empathize as a coach. For some of us, we might just be general empaths, so we can connect, we can empathize with individuals. Those of us who've gone through some real life struggles, who have been through a lot in our lives, this naturally trains us to be able to empathize with others. So we want to get to a place of empathy. But at some scenarios, in some cases, we might not be able to empathize. So sympathy will be enough to strengthen the relationship, as long as it's not done in a patronizing manner. It also comes down to how we do this, not just what we do. Next one, you're not alone in this. Is that coming from a place of empathy or from a place of sympathy? You are not alone in this. I feel you. I really resonate with what you're sharing with me. Am I coming from a place of sympathy here or from a place of empathy? What do we think? Put it in the comments box. I'm starting to realize that the lags in the comments are really stretching my time here. We're halfway through the session already, and I need to brass through the rest. So please do put it in the comments box. So Donna's saying empathy. So that is correct. We've done this the reverse way around here. So you're not alone in this is a place of empathy. We're showing that we're connecting. We're sharing that we resonate with it, that we feel the client, and that they're not alone. We're being there. We're supporting them. What might empathy look like? What might be the opposite to that? Adele said empathy. Congratulations, Adele. You got that correct. What might sympathy look like? So sympathy might look like, I feel bad for you. I feel bad for you. I really feel sorry for what you're going through. Again, we're keeping ourselves at a distance, but we're sharing that we can, our feelings with the coach. So we're sympathizing from a distance. Next one. I've already explained this, so this one should be easy. Which creates distance, empathy or sympathy? So if we're sympathizing, Donna says that sucks. That's another way. That's quite of a patronizer. That sucks is another way to put it across. Yep. So different words and different language we can do, but some kind of distance to comment on the situation without connecting to that situation in any way. Donna's saying sympathy, brilliant. The next one is sympathy. We've already talked about this. So sympathy creates distance. So what does empathy do? If sympathy creates distance from the client and their situation, what does empathy do? Well, empathy builds connection. And that's why, as a coach, it's really important for us to build that empathy, to learn how to empathize, and not just to empathize, but demonstrate how we empathize with our clients in that space. It really helps build the rapport, and it really helps build that connection. It shows, we talked about trust a couple of sessions ago, it shows that deep level of care with our clients. So empathy is a must in coaching. Which one can feel patronizing? Next one. Which one can feel patronizing? I've already covered this and mentioned this for you, so I'm going to just skip through. But that's sympathy. Sometimes if we sympathize in an incorrect manner, in an incorrect way, we choose the wrong words, it can come across as patronizing to our clients. Empathy, on the other hand, feels like being heard. So clients don't feel patronized. They feel like they're being heard. They feel like they're being valued. They feel like you're there. They can feel that connection. Now, which of the two do we think can come across as cold? Empathy or sympathy? Which one can come across as cold? Let me know in the comments box. Sympathy or empathy? Dale saying emotions are being valued. Brilliant. Yep, emotions are being valued when we're empathizing. Not so much when we're sympathizing. So Adele is saying sympathy. So the correct answer here is both. Depending on the context and the approach, but both empathy and sympathy can come across as cold. And we need to be aware, if we're experienced coaches, we need to be aware of when we actually empathize and it can come across as being cold. Sympathy is quite easy. If we're being quite patronizing, if we're just saying, oh, that must be really bad for you, or using the words that Donna put in there, that sucks, that can come across as a bit of cold because we're not getting that connection, we're not building that connection with the clients. But when we think about empathy, sometimes we can come across as closed because the way in which we empathize and when we imagine ourselves and we're putting ourselves into the client's shoes, we might not be able to fully understand their feelings. What I mean by this is if we've been through something similar, we all have different ways in which we respond, react, or cope or manage with life events. So from an empathetic point, we might have been through something similar that the client's gone through, but it was easier for us to go through. So we struggle to really, when we empathize, we may be empathizing from a place that we believe it's also easy for the client because what we've been through is similar. So it runs a risk of us coming across as a bit of a know-it-all, a bit of a master, and that it shouldn't be so bad or as bad as the client is making it out to be. So sometimes when we're empathizing from a place of understanding and gone through something similar that the client has gone, it can come across as cold. So both sympathy and empathy can come across as cold. We need to think about how we empathize and how we sympathize with our clients. Next question. Which one do we think can drain our energy? Sympathy or empathy? Which drains our energy? Donna summed that up. It can come across as, yeah, I've been there and done that, whilst empathetic, it can be dismissive. 100%. That's when it can be cold, when empathy is dismissive. I've been there, done that. Donna's saying empathy. So the correct answer here again is both. Both sympathy and empathy can drain our energy. And I'm going to give you the two ways in which both. And to sum this up, empathy drains our energy when we're feeling, when we're giving our clients that feeling, when we're connecting through feeling. Sympathy drains our energy when we're trying to understand. So we haven't been through what the client's sharing with us. We're struggling, sometimes trying to empathize and struggling to empathize and coming from a place of sympathy to truly understand the client's feelings and emotions. That can drain us energy. So sympathizing can drain energy when we're trying to understand, and empathy can drain our energy when we're trying or attempting to feel. We can become too emotionally involved with the client that we feel it on a different level. Maybe the experience that the client is sharing with us is triggering us because we've been through something in the past, and those triggers can be draining our energy as well. So both can drain our energy, and it's important for us as coaches to know when and to catch this and to apply reflective practice so we can manage and maintain our energy in that space. Donna's saying great points. Thank you so much for that. It's really important for us to know this as coaches so we understand why energy is being drained with the client. Is it because we're too emotionally involved, or is it because we can't understand through sympathy what the client is going through, so it creates a little bit of tension and struggle? So when to use empathy and when to use sympathy? When do we think each is appropriate in coaching? A question again for you in the comments box. So generally, we use sympathy when we're trying to understand. If we can't empathize, empathy needs to be the rule one of our go-to. As a professional coach, as an experienced coach, we need to be able to empathize with our clients. We need to be able to empathize with the clients in a way that it doesn't drain our energy and we don't become emotionally involved. If we can't empathize, then we want to come from a place of sympathy. If we just haven't been through something similar that the client shared, then sympathy is a good go-to to help us understand. And sometimes sympathy can help us get to that level of empathy when we start to understand what's really going on, and we can start to pull past experience that gives similar feelings, not necessarily similar experiences. So sympathy can lead us to empathy. So we need to use sympathy to help us to understand more. We need to use empathy to build connection and really connect with our clients. And as I mentioned, there's 5 ways in which we can show empathy in coaching. I'm going to go through these pretty quick because I've hit the 20 mark already. So empathetic listening. Now, I'm not going to go into detail on this because we're going to talk about empathetic listening in a couple of weeks' time when we look at the 5 levels of listening. But empathetic listening is the deepest level of listening. It's being there. It's listening to really listen, but also listening to put ourselves into the shoes of the others, of our clients. We're really trying to imagine what they're going through. We're really trying to feel what they're feeling in our listening. We're wholeheartedly, fully present with our clients. So by empathetic listening is a way of starting to demonstrate it in coaching. The way in which we reflect back can demonstrate and show empathy. The words, the language, the articulations that we choose to reflect back to the client can show whether or not we're empathizing or whether or not we're sympathizing. Using some of the examples earlier on, looking at how we can show that we're resonating, I can really resonate with that. What you're sharing here is this, and you know, I can really see why and understand why this might be causing this. So we can share our empathy in our reflecting back. Validation, letting them understand that how they feel is normal. I can understand why you've gone through this. I can understand these emotions. It makes sense that this is happening. So a little bit of validations behind their emotions can help. Curiosity is a big one. We need to be curious. We need to learn more. We need to, when we're thinking about sympathy, if we can't empathize, then be curious with our sympathy. Use words of sympathy, but ask those questions so we can reach that place of empathy. Presence, the most biggest one. Being there, listening, paying attention, observing, using our intuition, not being distracted, not allowing for interruptions, creating that space of psychological safety where the client can feel and express their full emotions and what they're going through. And our ability, I've not put it on here, but our ability to adapt to the situation, steering away from goals. Sometimes as coaches, we really fall into that trap of being really in a goal setting mode. What have you done? What's your actions? What's the commitment? Being able to spot that there's a change and shift in the energy. The client is really opening up to us and taking a different approach to our coaching, which is known as emergence coaching, and allowing those spaces of silence to allow our clients to process their emotions, to be there with our client is a way, the strongest way in which we can really demonstrate empathy in coaching. Now, I mentioned earlier on, and it's the last thing we're going to talk about here, and I'm going to go to the experienced coaches to ask their strategies, what they've done, what they currently do right now. How do we prevent ourselves from becoming emotionally involved with our clients? So we can really resonate. I'm sure we can all think of a session. I can think of multiple sessions that I've had through my career in coaching where we've coached. What they've shared is really deep, really raw, really vulnerable, and we feel what they feel, and it feels heavy, and we carry that energy with us through the rest of the day, through the whole of the session. Sometimes those feelings and that energy can affect how we perform as a coach and the benefit that we give to our clients as well. But what strategies, what techniques can we use to avoid becoming emotionally involved in the scenario and what the client's taken away? And emotional involvement can come either from our role when we're empathizing or if we're sympathizing as well. Sometimes there's a risk if we're coming from a place of sympathy that we want to enter the mode of rescuer. Whilst we don't fully understand and we can't put ourselves in the shoes of our client, we can understand maybe the feelings that they've gone through, that what's gone through is pretty bad. We might want to jump into that level of rescuer, or that space or role of rescuer, which again is involvement in the coaching space. So Adele's saying mindfulness exercises and reflection. That's beautiful, Adele. We need to be able to apply that before and after our coaching sessions. How do we reflect? How do we think about how we don't become so emotionally involved? Think about the questions that we've asked. We asked too many questions to go too deep, and we asked questions to pull them away. Are we distinguishing ourselves from the scenario and the client from the scenario as well? Donna saying preparation before coaching, staying present during reflection afterwards, and finally removing the coaching hat. 100%. And that can be done through the mindfulness exercises that Donna shared there. So after our coaching session, we need to have that bit where we need to relax. We need to let go of that energy. We need to let go of what we're carrying and move on with the rest of our day. We're not a rescuer for our coaches. We need to understand that. We're not there to rescue them. So a few ways in which I use, and it's a realistic affirmation that I always keep at the forefront of my mind, that my role as a coach is a mirror, not a sponge. I'm not there to observe so absorb all those emotions and what that client's going through. I'm there to act as a mirror. I'm there to take it and reflect it back to them so they can find their own solutions and they can understand their emotions and what they're going through more at a more deeper level. I'm not there to carry it and to take it away. So please take this affirmation away. Your role is a mirror, not a sponge. Next is I like to imagine a bridge between myself and the client. So everything that they share and everything they're going through is at the other side of that bridge. And the feelings and the emotions stay there. I'm a very visual person. I like to visualize. It's not for everybody. So if you have got other strategies and tips like Adele shared, like Donna shared, put them in the chat for everybody because we all have different ways in how we manage this. But I'm a very visual person. And when I start to feel those emotions, when I start to feel heavy, I need to start to create that bridge in my mind. Okay, so that's over there. I'm going to stay over this side and I'm not going to absorb these. I'm going to remind myself I'm a mirror. I'm going to ask questions. The third one is I remind myself to switch from a feeler, because we can all come from a place of feeling. If you've done your Myers-Briggs, some of us are feelers, overthinkers. I try and switch from having that feeling mode, that emotional connection, to back to detective, to start to try and take maybe a helicopter view or more objective view, just stepping back from the feelings and starting to remember my role is to be curious. I need to ask more questions. How can I switch and change this conversation into finding more about the facts and ways in which we can change this perspective and change this thinking rather than staying there with the client? We do need to let them feel, we need to create that space, but equally we need to try and help them find that path forward. And that's our role. Our role is to become more of a detective, become more curious, and start to think about how we can help them move forward than just staying in that space of that empathy and that feeling. So that's 3 ways from me, and that sums up today. So I'm just going to bring in a few more things. So Adele's saying avoid advice and personal experiences. 100% we need to avoid that as a coach on every level, not just when we're empathizing. Visiting your happy place, create a safe place for yourself afterwards. That's really great. Thank you so much for that, Adele. Some great tips there. So if you are a coach, you're an experienced coach, how do you bridge yourself and pull yourself away from becoming emotionally involved with your clients when what they're sharing is quite deep and quite sensitive? And especially if you're an empath, it's something we need to work on. How do we take away this? How do we reflect? And how do we think? But the biggest thing for me is always reminding myself that my role as a coach is to mirror, not to be a sponge. I'm not there to absorb their feelings. I'm there to mirror them back. Now, if you missed a session, I can see we had a spike of people tune in. If you missed a session, you can go back and watch it on the replay on YouTube, on LinkedIn, wherever you're watching this. I've got on the screen 2 QR codes. If you scan the QR code in the top left, this will take you to our website. We have a whole page and host of free resources where you can learn more coaching in between our sessions each week. If you like to read and you want a book, we have our book here, Coaching Essentials. So the QR code on the slides there, that will take you to our book. You can purchase our book and get more information and start your coaching practice through our Coaching Essentials. I just want to say a huge thank you to everybody who's tuned in. A big thank you to Donna and Adele for their contributions and their expertise, sharing it in the space. I really appreciate this today. And I wish you all any questions that you have, drop them in the comments box on the replay. I will get back to you. And I look forward to seeing you next week, where we're going to actually look at how we can start to bring in fun into our coaching sessions. So they don't always have to be deep. They don't always have to be goal oriented. We can have a bit of fun with our clients, keeping it at a professional level. So I look forward to seeing you all next week. Thank you for watching, and I'll speak to you all very soon. Thank you.